Good afternoon and welcome to our 2024 Distinguished Faculty Lecture. It's a beautiful day. It's a day of joy. It's a day of celebration. But before we get started, I want to offer a reflection. These are challenging times, and rest assured that UMass Boston, the most diverse campus in New England, the third most diverse campus in our country, will honor, will protect the rights of our most vulnerable students, faculty, and staff, now and moving forward, in their fundamental, inalienable right to pursue an education in the full, deep sense of that pursuit. The idea of public education is an emancipatory idea that first formed as a concept of free, secular, non-denominational, compulsory for all in the neural pathways of a Bostonian. And we at UMass Boston treasure and will continue to defend the fundamental idea that the pursuit of higher education is fundamental for the flourishing of engaged citizens capable of self-government. But now it's a time to celebrate our brilliant scholars. Established in 1978, the Chancellor's Award for Distinguished Scholarship, Service, and Teaching are presented annually to 3 faculty members who have made exceptional contributions in these areas of faculty responsibility. Honorees are then invited to address the university community at this lecture to share reflections on the award and their work at UMass Boston. Today, it is my pleasure to be honoring the 2024 recipients of the Distinguished Chancellor's Awards. Professor Suha Ballout in the Department of Nursing, recipient of the Chancellor's Award for Distinguished Teaching, whose commitment to anti-racist teaching practices and learning environments and passionate leadership of the Center for Innovative Teaching highlight her unwavering dedication to inclusive education. Professor Laura Hayman in the Department of Nursing, recipient of the Chancellor's Award for Distinguished Service, whose leadership in establishing the Office of Research at the Manning College of Nursing and Health Sciences and tireless mentoring of faculty and doctoral students has fostered a culture of academic excellence. Professor Peter Kiang at the School for Global Inclusion and Social Development, recipient of the Chancellor's Award for Distinguished Scholarship, whose community-oriented research advocacy has advanced the interest of the Asian American community and put UMass Boston on the scholarly map as one of the nation's top Asian American and Native American Pacific Islander serving institutions. U3. And of course, the distinguished faculty lecture is one of the many ways we shine a light on the exemplary academic excellence your scholarship embodies, the excellence that defines UMass Boston 2.0 each year. Indeed, the lecture showcases our singular ability to bring together people or perspectives around innovative research endeavors and exceptional educational programs to serve the common good. This is a fundamental idea. The Romans articulated a concept. They called it civiltà. Laura knows what I'm talking about, civiltà. That's citizens coming together for the common good. Citizens coming together for the common good. There's a message there for our time and for our country today. So, to our 2024 distinguished faculty members, we're proud to see your work recognized and grateful for your passionate commitment to outstanding scholarship, teaching, and service. I know all of us are looking forward to your presentations. Please accept my personal congratulations and best wishes for your continued success at UMass Boston. With that, I am pleased to introduce our provost, Joe Berger, to offer remarks. The provost is a widely respected global higher education scholar. Provost Berger embodies UMass Boston's deep commitment to rigorous student-centered education. And let me tell you, every morning I wake up, and the first thing I ask myself, what is the provost going to tell me to do today? Provost Berger.
Thank you, Chancellor. Good afternoon. All right, let's do that one more time. Good afternoon. All right. So as the Chancellor noted, these truly are challenging times. And actually, it makes it more important that we take a moment to pause and to celebrate for the best possible reasons. We are celebrating remarkable individuals, members of our community, scholarly and academic leaders who tirelessly give of themselves to benefit our students, to benefit our colleagues, to benefit our community. You know, as a university, how we engage as scholars, as teachers, as mentors, as servant leaders matters. And to win these awards is really quite an accomplishment because we have so many amazing colleagues here at UMass Boston that do so much for us. And the fact that, you know, we're recognizing three incredible colleagues is both an honor to them, but they also honor all of us as an academic community. You know, when you look at the tripartite foundation of our profession, research and scholarship, teaching and learning, and service and community engagement, I can't think of three individuals who better epitomize those roles. So as we also think about where we are right now and how important it is, as the Chancellor noted, that UMass Boston, with our very unique mission, again, in a city that has more university students than any other in the US, we do fulfill a particular unique mission. And in order to fulfill the responsibility, right, that comes with the privilege of that mission, means that we need each of us to go above and beyond the basic expectations of our roles, right? And to transcend, right, the fundamental responsibilities so that we can give to others in ways that transform lives. You know, and Peter and Laura and Suha, I have personally had the privilege to get to know, to work with, to see the kind of remarkable human beings they are and how that infuses the work that they do that benefits so many others. And so for that, I'm very, very grateful. So let's get on with the stars of the show. So first up, it's my pleasure. You'll get to see me a few times this afternoon as I get to introduce each one of them in a little more detail. But we're going to start with the recipient of our Chancellor's Award for Distinguished Teaching, and that is Professor Suha Ballout. So Suha, you know, as the Chancellor noted, is been a real champion of teaching and learning in ways that don't just recognize, but elevate, sustain, and celebrate the cultural and the linguistic wealth of our diverse campus community. So Suha wouldn't be receiving this award if we hadn't heard from so many students about the remarkable ways that she touches their lives in her classroom teaching, the ways in which she uses innovative pedagogy, pushes herself and others to look at better, more authentic ways to assess student learning, but also to develop and utilize curricular materials that help us better able to prepare future nurses to actually serve the people that they work with. And remember, you know, in healthcare, patients spend much, much more time with nurses than they do with doctors. And so to have cultural competence, to have the ability to empathize and understand the people that you're serving is an important part of an education. And Suha is a champion of that in her own classroom, but not just her own classroom, in pushing her colleagues to think about, you know, how we infuse inclusive excellence throughout the curriculum into our pedagogies, to recognize that we cannot be excellent if we're not also inclusive, to recognize that actually we can't be inclusive unless we're providing excellence, the highest rigor. And not only in her own classroom, but throughout the Department of Nursing, throughout the Manning College, but also as leader, as the Chancellor noted, CIT, but also as a real champion for the Clinical Leadership Collaborative for Diversity in Nursing, one of our signature programs that actually, because of the work of Suha, her leadership, along with her colleagues, you know, generated a $10 million investment from Mass General Brigham into this partnership. So Suha's passion for culturally sustaining instruction and advising and mentoring isn't just what she does in her own classroom, it's what she does to make our entire campus community a better place for teaching and learning. Suha.
Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you, Provost Berger. This is going to be hard to follow. So Chancellor Suárez-Orozco, Provost Berger, esteemed colleagues, honored guests, friends, and family, thank you for joining us here today. I stand here as the 2024 Chancellor's Awardee for Distinguished Teaching, and this is an honor. I am humbled and grateful for this recognition, and I'd also like to extend my deepest congratulations to my fellow honorees, Dr. Laura Hayman and Dr. Peter Kiang. Your work in service and scholarship really enriches my commitment to this university, and I'm honored to share this moment with you. Teaching is often described as a noble profession, a calling that goes beyond the transmission of knowledge to the shaping of minds, the igniting of passions, and the nurturing of dreams. Teaching has always been more than a job for me. It is a responsibility and a joy. When I reflect on my journey as an educator, I am reminded of the many faces that have inspired me, the eager eyes of students, the collaborative spirit of colleagues who share my passion for learning, and the unwavering support of mentors who believed in me, and often more than I believed in myself. To my late mentor, Dr. Pat's daughter, a special thank you. She molded me into the courageous, passionate, and values-driven professional I am today, and her influence continues to guide me everywhere and every day. As I celebrate today, I must also speak with a sense of gravity. Our world is facing immense suffering, and we cannot ignore it. As we gather, lives are being upended, and many of my friends, colleagues, and loved ones in Lebanon, Gaza, and other parts of the Middle East and the world have faced unspeakable losses. Some of my dearest friends and colleagues have perished, and others are struggling for survival amidst unimaginable tragedy. I want to take a moment to remember them, to hold them close in our hearts, and to honor their lives by committing ourselves to a vision of peace, justice, and understanding. UMass Boston provides stability, empathy, and support in a world where students, faculty, and staff navigate a vastly different realities. For members of our community from war-torn regions, being at the university is not just an academic or professional pursuit. It's a personal journey. We carry the emotional and mental weight of ongoing conflicts, worrying about family and friends while striving to fulfill their roles. Faculty and staff, like students, bring their expertise and lived experiences of resilience, compassion, and sometimes trauma. Here at UMass Boston, we seek a compassionate space that honors these complex experiences. And by fostering a culture of understanding with resources such as flexible deadlines and mental health support tailored to diverse immigrant experiences, and a campus that values each individual's contributions, we can create an environment where all can thrive, both academically and emotionally. UMass Boston can be a true sanctuary where everyone feels valued, supported, and understood, whether learning, teaching, or even serving. In a room full of friends, colleagues, mentors, students, I'm incredibly grateful to have two extraordinary people with me here today. My dad, Latif, is here, who came last month from Lebanon, and my daughter, Suha Jr., who has been asking why hasn't she been mentioned yet. They instill in me the strength and resilience that have carried me through some of life's most challenging moments. My dad made education non-negotiable, even during the darkest times of war in Beirut, and my daughter, my source of hope and joy, reminds me daily why this work matters so deeply. They are my anchors, and it means the world to me to have them here with me today. We were asked to talk about our journey. So growing up in Beirut during the war in the 80s, I learned about courage, resilience, and the transformative power of education. Attending school was more than an academic pursuit. It was a way to reclaim a sense of normalcy and to hold on to hope in a place marked by conflict. My dad, again, who always ensured we viewed school as essential, taught me that education was not merely about acquiring knowledge, but building our spirits and fortifying our minds. Those early experiences taught me that learning is an act of resistance and resilience, and in many ways, that's the way to go. These principles instilled in me a commitment to creating spaces where others could find safety, courage, and strength, just as I did. When I began my nursing career, I worked within a healthcare system as complex as inequitable. As a nurse, I witnessed how social determinants of health, such as socioeconomic status, political instability, and community violence, profoundly impact health outcomes. These realities were often beyond my patients' control, yet they shaped every aspect of their health and well-being. I saw how conflict, poverty, systemic barriers exacerbated suffering. My experiences solidified my commitment to health equity and the belief that health is not just a personal issue, but a social one intertwined with justice and human rights. My experience as a student navigating the complexities of a war-torn country and my professional journey as a nurse and an educator have uniquely positioned me to understand the urgent need for equity and social justice within the healthcare system and the educational system as well. Leveraging my lived and professional expertise for systemic change put this at the core of my commitment to UMass Boston. So I chose to come to UMass Boston. My decision was deliberate because this institution embodies a commitment to diversity, inclusion, and community empowerment, providing a platform where I can advocate for transformative change. Here, I can harness my knowledge and passion to support students from diverse backgrounds and inspire future healthcare leaders who will carry forward the mission of equity in their practices. UMass Boston is not just my workplace, it is a community where I can actively contribute to reshaping systems for a more just and compassionate society. As I transitioned from nursing practice into academia, my goal became to educate students to be skilled healthcare providers and empathetic advocates who understand the systemic nature of health disparities and human rights in healthcare. My teaching philosophy centers on creating classrooms that are as inclusive as they are rigorous. I strive to ensure that every student, regardless of background, feels seen, valued, and empowered. This participatory approach combines the science of nursing with the art of humanity, urging students to look beyond the diagnoses and see the whole person in every patient. I encourage my students to consider their immediate clinical roles and the broader systemic barriers to health equity and well-being. Although this award is about teaching, my program of research has always been intertwined with my teaching philosophies and activities. My research focuses on understanding the impact of marginalization and oppression on health outcomes and access to health, and this commitment to health equity and social justice really informs how I teach. At UMass Boston, I had the privilege of creating spaces where students learned the science of nursing alongside the skills of empathy, critical thinking, and cultural humility. My goal is to teach nursing not as a set of clinical tasks, but as a profession grounded in advocacy, inclusivity, and holistic understanding of patient care. My classroom has become a space where we discuss theory and real-world issues such as social justice, racial equity, and daily ethical dilemmas healthcare professionals face. These discussions are significant as students grapple with the complexities of nursing within the diverse communities, a challenge I aim to prepare them for through engaging and transformative learning experiences. For example, in my Nursing in the Community course, we start with an exercise where students reflect on the impact of health equity, social justice, and social determinants of health on nursing roles and patient advocacy. And this activity prompts students to synthesize how these concepts shape their approach to health and well-being, but also to shape them as future nurses. This semester, and I can't be more proud of my students, one student reflected that understanding patients' social and economical background enables them to tailor care to their specific needs, such as addressing transportation or financial resource barriers. These reflections highlight the transformative understanding of nursing as both patient-centered and social justice-oriented, an essential perspective that cannot be more important today. I have other assignments that help students create positionality maps to explore their own identities and experiences and how that influences their understanding of patient needs and healthcare inequities as well. With activities like these, students are encouraged to acknowledge their own biases, develop cultural humility, and approach patient care more sensitively. So how do I foster such transformative learning environments? I incorporate active learning strategies and technology. In my large lecture courses, technology allows students to engage in asynchronous discussions where they reflect on complex topics and submit their thoughts in ways to build a collaborative learning community. This process encourages inclusive teaching principles as every student is able in their own way to participate in the class. My hope is that students leave my classroom with the knowledge and the empathy required to lead in diverse healthcare environments, advocating for change and compassion in their communities and beyond. An important part of my work extends beyond the classroom to initiatives that directly support developing a diverse, empathetic, and well-prepared nursing workforce. A project really close to my heart is the Clinical Leadership Collaborative for Diversity in Nursing, or CLCDN, a transformative partnership between UMass Boston and Mass General Brigham. And as one of the leaders of this program, I have the privilege of working with students from underrepresented backgrounds, supporting them in overcoming systemic barriers to success in nursing. Through this fellowship, we really aim to foster a workforce that reflects the diversity of the communities we serve, a critical factor in promoting health equity and delivering culturally competent care. I am also proud to co-lead the UMass Boston Behavioral Health Equity Fellowship. And this fellowship also focuses on specific and pressing needs, which is to increase the number of nurses prepared to address mental health disparities in marginalized communities. And this also provides an opportunity for nursing students with specialized training in culturally responsive behavioral care. My increased interest in mental health, particularly in addressing disparities within marginalized communities, has guided me and drove me to change some of the focus of my work. And it led me to secure a grant with a multidisciplinary group of wonderful colleagues here at UMass Boston. We were funded from the Department of Higher Education in Massachusetts to propose the WEAVE framework to enhance our students' mental and behavioral health pipeline for increasing the preparedness of the workforce. And this project was really an innovative interdisciplinary labor of passion that focuses on integrating career pathways, educational programs, and cultural competency training, ensuring that our workforce is skilled and attuned to the diverse needs of the populations we serve. CIT also is another passion of mine. And as the current co-director, I've had the privilege of collaborating with faculty from diverse disciplines across campus to reshape educational approaches, prioritizing justice, equity, and compassion. And through CIT, we developed transformative programs, including forums, workshops, panels, and faculty development initiatives that address critical issues like mental health, anti-racism, and inclusive pedagogies. Another initiative that I'm proud of, and I promise this would be the last one, is the Beacon Flex collaboration and working with the team, which has been transformed UMass Boston into a flexible, hybrid, and an innovative learning leader. Beacon Flex allows students to participate in classes in person, online, and through a combination of both, enabling them to choose the learning format that best suits their needs and circumstances. And working closely with instructional designers and the educational technology team, I helped to adapt Beacon Flex for inclusive and accessible learning. So as I was preparing this talk, I reflected on what motivates me. And honestly, my daughter, Suha Jr., who again is so happy to be mentioned, constantly reminds me why this work is essential. She represents the hope for a future in which empathy, justice, and resilience form the foundation of our society. She reminds me that each day in our classrooms, we have the power to shape a generation of future leaders who can build a world where education is a bridge to understanding, a pathway to healing, and a catalyst for meaningful change. As the Chancellor's Distinguished Teaching Award recipient, I am grateful for the journey that brought me here and the opportunity to continue inspiring others. This award represents my work and the collective spirit of UMass Boston, a commitment to diversity, inclusion, and justice that makes this community so vibrant and powerful. To my colleagues, students, mentors, and those who have supported me, thank you for your unwavering dedication to building a more just and inclusive world. And as I conclude, I invite each of us to honor those who are no longer with us by striving for a future where education remains a sanctuary, a bridge, and a path forward. Let us use our roles as educators, advocates, and learners to create a world where everyone can find strength, resilience, and hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Suha. I think we all even have greater appreciation for your talents as a teacher. And now I'll have the distinct honor and pleasure to introduce the winner of this year's Chancellor's Award for Distinguished Scholarship, Professor Peter Kiang. So let me start by saying, Peter, I'm not sure I ever told you this, but, I knew of Peter and his work long before I got here to UMass Boston and had the privilege to become his colleague. But Peter's long career has been appropriately recognized and awarded, at the national level through the grants that he's received, whether they be from, the National Endowment for the Humanities, the National Academy of Education, the Federal Department of Education, where Peter's leadership, again, with colleagues, has resulted in UMass Boston proudly being recognized as an Anna-Peasy institution, with nearly $10 million in federal funding to support that work. But here at the state, Peter has received support from the Massachusetts Teachers Association, and has received statewide awards. Oh, actually, I even forgot some of his national awards from the American Education Research Association. I mean, the list goes on. But while these are some of the traditional metrics by which we look at somebody and say they're a distinguished scholar, that they've produced knowledge, right, that has shaped and impacted the world, one of the things that I admire and respect so much about Peter is the way that he does his work, again, with integrity and authenticity right here in our most local communities. One of the strengths of UMass Boston, where we have an international reach, a national impact, is that we understand that we're deeply embedded in the fabrics of our local communities. And nobody has been a better champion for that than Peter Kiang. Because Peter's scholarship focuses, not just focuses on, right, our local populations, but engages in very real ways with our local communities. Peter also is not a scholar who does work in isolation. He engages with his colleagues, with community members. And what I've been particularly impressed by is the ways in which Peter engages our students as his colleagues in his scholarly endeavors. This makes a real difference, right? It improves, right, the quality of the work. But it also means that Peter has not just produced great scholarship by himself, he has elevated others to make those contributions, to learn with and from him. That is the mark of a truly transformational scholar. And so I want to finish by saying that Peter is not somebody who draws boundaries in the different aspects of his roles. And the fact that he is the first individual in the history of UMass Boston to be recognized with the Chancellor's Distinguished Award for teaching, for service, and for scholarship. That is amazing. And so I present to you the Triple Crown winner of the Chancellor's Awards, Peter Kiang.
Some props here. And these guys actually, they live in separate boxes. So this is maybe the second time that they've all been able to come together. And it's be part of a third moment. So that's pretty nice. Yes.
Thank you, Provost, Chancellor. Respect to Suha, Laura, and to Terry Kawashima and the Scholarship Committee. Deepest appreciation to Shirley and Lakshmi and to Zungguo, Paul, Rajini for last spring's nomination. Love always to the faculty, staff, students, and alumni from the Asian American Studies program and to our donors as well. Honor to the ancestors and family lineage. Thank you all for being here. 50 years ago, in fall 1973, renowned Japanese-American sociologist Scott Miyakawa offered the first Asian American Studies course at UMass Boston. I found an early draft of his syllabus in the Special Collections archives at UCLA when I made a research trip there in 2016. I also found Scott's annual faculty report from 1973-74 with his note about that course. Most of us probably don't expect our own AFRs to end up as research materials in UCLA's library, but I was thrilled to find Scott's evidence of our Asian American Studies curriculum origin story. This also showed me that our own program's numerous archival materials should be better recognized as scholarly resources with long-term value. We shouldn't need UCLA to do this for us. I met Scott Miyakawa only once in his Wheatley office in 1980, just a year before he died. So when I started teaching here in spring 1987, I immediately reactivated his Asian Minorities in America course, now called Asians in the US, which we have offered every year since then, reaching thousands of diverse students across generations. My 1980s years of research, teaching, and service at UMass Boston were sponsored by the William Joyner Center. Kevin Bowen and David Hunt, the co-directors, agreed with my urging that their vital mission to address the social consequences of the Vietnam War should embrace Southeast Asian refugees as well as US veterans. UMass Boston enrolled many student veterans and refugees at that time, including those taking our earliest courses. Side by side in our classrooms, they grounded our program not only in the complex realities of war, trauma, and loss, but also with urgent visions of education for rebuilding, healing, transforming. Our core pedagogies of life and death with refugees and veterans distinguished us from the identity-centered demands for racial representation that students expected from Asian American studies at other schools nationally. For example, I took this photo at a 1990 State House protest against public higher education budget cuts. Kim Young-win, a second wave refugee who fled Vietnam by boat, is speaking here about educational access, while her Asian American Studies classmate, Shep Gurwitz, a Vietnam veteran and former Army paratrooper, holds the UMB banner. Already by then, I defined my long-term scholarly project in terms of building, leading, and sustaining an Asian American Studies academic program at the community's university. This was complicated and highly contextual, but the commitments have always been clear. Our unit is small but mighty. This is our faculty meeting 2 weeks ago. Shirley, of course, is our endowed distinguished professor for Asian American Studies and recipient of the 2016 Chancellor's Distinguished Teaching Award. This is Lakshmi's newest book, published earlier this year. And our newly hired, homegrown assistant professor colleague, Dr. Songka Lam, is all systems go, bridging generations and moving us in fresh directions. Our advanced PhD students, Kim and Lynn, are passionate researchers, teachers. Our full-time program staff, Emily and Nia, are gifted alumni artists, educators. And with our closest partners, no one has had more gaman and gravitas than Paul Watanabe, recipient of the Chancellor's Distinguished Service Award in 2013. As for me, this is a Boston Chinatown community mural project in 1986, a few months before teaching my first course at UMass Boston. The mural design on the building's east wall was literally scaffolded to flow as an Asian American Studies local history curriculum from Chinatown's beginnings to immigrant labor, housing struggles, and daily life scenes. My then 8-year-old son, Jazz, took this photo in 2002, 16 years after the mural was dedicated and 1 month before the building was demolished. I rescued a few of the bricks that I had painted to become archival sources to show evidence of Chinatown's community history curriculum before the rubble was hauled away and dumped forever. These little painted bricks are building blocks for the big idea I'm suggesting today. Our Asian American Studies program participates directly in local community history making, while we also continually document, preserve, and teach these histories intergenerationally with students and alumni who contextually connect in their own ways to make meaning and new histories themselves. This is a long-term, distinguished scholarly project that is student and community centered, not just student and community engaged. The mural's multilingual Justice for Asians scene, for example, shows the reality of and resistance to intense 1980s anti-Asian violence in Metro Boston, decades before COVID anti-Asian hate. And here is early January 1987, 2 weeks before the start of my first Asian American Studies course at UMass Boston, the first rally for racial justice led by Cambodians in the United States. With Revere City Hall in the background, Revere's historic Khmer community marched to protest a Christmas Eve arson that displaced 20 Cambodian refugees from their home. Too much harassment, vandalism, and assault had gone unreported and unchallenged in their neighborhood. Knowing that this was a history-making moment that should be documented, I was there, participating and taking photos. Mel King was there too, modeling solidarity. As the sign shows, the rally message was "Enough is enough." Fast forward 5 years to the June 1992 Dorchester Day Parade, when City Councilor Albert Dapper O'Neill publicly announced his disgust with the storefront and faces of the growing Vietnamese community in Fields Corner, 10 minutes from our campus. On a hot mic, he was recorded saying, "I thought I was in Saigon, for Christ's sakes. It makes you sick, for Christ's sakes." In response, a few days later, one of the first rallies for racial justice by Vietnamese in the US showed out at Boston City Hall, another moment for making and marking history. A refugee father and his young daughter with her simple sign, "Teach me no racism," caught my camera eye. O'Neill was invited to apologize publicly to the community, but he boldly refused, while the 6-year-old girl with her sign walked into the frame to stand silently but dramatically in direct juxtaposition. My documenting of these movement moments produced original archival sources for our program's teaching every year. For example, I used the 1992 father-daughter rally photo as a prompt for a children's book writing activity in a 2004 Southeast Asians in the US course, asking the class to imagine what the father and daughter remembered about the rally and how they reflected on it now. Immediately, a Vietnamese American student in the class said, "I think I know him." A month later, refugee father, Mr. Toi Mai, former president of the Vietnamese Fishermen's Association of Massachusetts, proudly came to class to share his deep community knowledge. After he died in 2011, I located his daughter, Jenny, the girl with the sign, and offered our respect for her father's leadership legacy. Jenny herself then visited us in 2013 to share her own participant knowledge from making history with her iconic sign 21 years earlier. Fast forward to the pandemic. With Asian American Studies 423, Boston's Asian American Communities, a course I created in 1988 and am still teaching now. This is March 2021, days after the murders of 6 Asian women targeted as the enemy in Metro Atlanta. Even on Zoom, our grief is so visceral. In this heavy moment, the spotlit student tells us that her mother's friend, a Vietnamese elder, was assaulted near the North Quincy T-stop just 1 month earlier. The police failed to treat the attack as a hate crime, even though Asian elders were targets during COVID, and the local news media had ignored the case altogether. Our class was the first to know outside of the family's network. Building on the students' family community knowledge, we actively found out more. Mr. Liam Tran, a 69-year-old Vietnamese refugee, was assaulted in front of the North Quincy Red Line subway station in February 2021. The white male attacker left him unconscious and bleeding on the freezing sidewalk with a fractured skull and severely damaged spinal cord. The Quincy police report noted that a pedestrian called 911 after realizing that Mr. Trun's motionless body on the ground was not a dumped bag of trash. In December 2022, 10 months after the attack, the perpetrator pled guilty, and 25 of us, Asian American Studies students, staff, faculty, and alumni, rallied on the steps of Norfolk County Superior Court to demand justice in sentencing. Freshly made signs with multilingual messages of support and power recalled the 1986 Chinatown mural. The signs also specifically referenced those history-making community moments of the Enough is Enough rally in Revere and the Boston City Hall Teach Me No Racism rally. Though new signs were created for Mr. Chun's case, their embedded references and meanings, what they signified for those who know, offer evidence of a much longer-term program-based, student and community-centered, educational, archival, scholarly commitment. I'll end with an example I rarely share based on my own work with Asian American veterans. In the 1990s, I joined Dr. Chalsa Liu's research team funded by the National Center for PTSD in Honolulu. The Asian American Vietnam veteran race-related stressor study was primarily quantitative in order to elegantly and empirically answer the basic question, is racism traumatic? Because of my prior work with veterans in Asian American Studies and the Joyner Center, Chalsa asked me to co-lead the qualitative parts of the study with her. Together, we designed a way to meet IRB clinical debriefing requirements while documenting voices through talk story with 300 plus Asian American and Pacific Islander Vietnam veterans regarding their military experiences with racism and trauma. Of the total 300, I led 40 debriefing sessions myself. Here are excerpts from one. We met in the Maui Vet Center in 1998, 30 years after this veteran's combat experience. His service record was intense. Special Forces with the Long Range Reconnaissance Patrol, a unit comprised mainly of Asian American and Pacific Islander soldiers who could racially pass for the Vietnamese enemy and were therefore used for extremely dangerous deep field operations in enemy territory. The interview took over 90 minutes, so I'm only referencing two brief excerpts. Early in the debriefing, the veteran describes his first race-related traumatic experience. It is highly disturbing, involving torture of a Vietnamese prisoner who looked like his brother. He instinctively tried to stop it and was quickly disciplined and labeled as a gook lover. To adapt and survive, he transforms from a simple island boy into a demon. Later in the debriefing, he further explains, with the LERP team, we were dressed like the enemy, wear black pajamas, take a bath with Vietnamese soap, wear slippers. We went through a crash course in the language and the customs. It used to help when we used to go out on patrol and come across the enemy. We'd have that precious first few seconds to throw them off and then open fire. Our job was to go out and hunt, draw enemy fire and kill. The most dangerous part of it was returning to base camp, where we'd get shot upon by our own people. And then there would be constant fights with the people there because we looked like the way we were. We were outcasts, Like I said, we turned into demons. We weren't human beings anymore. You have a 100% PTSD rating, I said. Yeah, and I got 2 gunshot wounds, 2 Purple Hearts. Did anyone ever talk to you about the race aspects of your experience in relation to your PTSD? No, no one has. Only you right now. Do you see a connection? Oh, yeah. After he shared several other compelling examples, connecting race, war, and trauma healing, we concluded with the final IRB required clinical question about how he's feeling and doing. Hilariously, after such an intense and intimate talk story session with me, he laughs with his full humanity centered in the moment and clarifies, I'm hungry. I want to go eat Chinese food. That's what I'm thinking about. Dim sum, roast duck would be pretty good. Just like when I was in Vietnam, we let them guys take a village. All us Hawaiians, we're chasing the chickens and the pigs. Grab that chicken, grab the pig. That's how we were. All this is making me hungry for Chinese food. We ended with laughter and appreciation, which is how I want to end here as well. Sometimes when I encounter casual campus conversations with references to social media versions of PTSD, trauma dumping, trauma bonding, etc., the voice and survivor knowledge of this Maui Vietnam veteran reminds me of how our Asian American Studies program was uniquely built through pedagogies of life and death. and why leading and sustaining this program has been and still is such a meaningful, long-term, distinguished scholarly project. And honestly, after sharing all this, I'm secretly hoping that there's some roast duck over there and waiting for us at the reception. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for sharing of your work and yourself. And now I have the honor to present Dr. Laura Hayman, the very deserving awardee of the Chancellor's Award for Distinguished Service. You know, and service is a broad umbrella, you know, when we talk about faculty service and what it can mean. You know, when I think of Laura, and I've had the privilege to work with her and interact with her in a number of ways over the last few years, you know, I think of service as leadership. Not leadership that necessarily comes with a particular role, although Laura has served in plenty of those, but service that comes from the ability to transcend your own self-interest, to think about how you can benefit your students and your colleagues in your community. Again, whether it's right here or whether it's nationally. That also, I think of Laura as somebody who leads through inquiry, to always asking the important questions, not leading because there's a platform to be on, but leading because there are things we need to know. There are things we need to be able to do. There are things we need to understand. And that epitomizes Laura's approach to service as a leader. You know, so Laura's made a profound impact here and elsewhere. You know, whether it's in the nursing department, where I think she's chaired too many committees to name, and then we'd run out of time. But it's also where she's mentored, you know, her colleagues and students to help them be leaders, so that leadership, right, isn't just a solitary endeavor. She's a visionary and pioneering leader on this campus, you know, creating the Office of Research in the Manning College, and, you know, being an associate dean for research when we didn't have associate deans for research. And now, by the way, stepping up at a point when, you know, I often say we have no laurels to rest on. Laura should be resting on her laurels, but here she, because her department needed her, now she stepped up to chair the department. Not something she needed to do, but something we needed her to do. You know, but she's also on campus-wide committees. Again, I get the privilege of working with her as a long-term member of the long range, the Budget and Planning Committee for Faculty Council. Again, always asking the insightful questions, but also helping others nationally, serving on editorial boards for some of the top journals in the field, serving as a leader in numerous national associations. Laura doesn't engage in any aspect of her role without serving others and without providing leadership. So it's very meaningful and appropriate that we get to hear from one of our great leaders, Dr. Laura Hayman.
Thank you, Provost and Chancellor, and warmest congratulations to our Triple Crown, Peter and Suha. And I extend gratitude to my colleagues in nursing and across the university who have nominated me and supported me for this award. I am truly honored and humbled. So I start with some disclosures. This talk was going to be entitled Service, a life course social ecological perspective, which is the lens through which I view my research, scholarship, teaching, practice, and leadership roles, which I all believe and the provost are inextricably related. So I mentioned to my husband, you remember that award I received in May? well, I have a talk to give on service. And he decided and he assembled all these slides. So I give the credits for the slides as well as the omissions and commissions to him. The oral narrative is mine. So where do we start? We start with a story. And we all have a story for sure. And these are pictures from my story, trying to highlight service as well as the interrelationship with leadership, scholarship, and teaching and mentoring. And I know that everyone in this room looking around has similar types of stories. So a brief outline, we begin as a developmentalist too with the early beginnings, role modeling for service-related roles, the academic foundation, the importance of presence, sharing their message, and importantly, some lessons learned. So of note, Webster's Treasury of Relevant Quotations didn't have any listing for service. We always look for operational definition. But Roget's thesaurus, according to my helper, the words that emerged, utility and benevolence, which give us a clearer understanding of what is required for a life of service, including efficiency, creating value, benefiting the common public good, unselfishness, tolerance, empathic, competence, and caring. And so this slide illustrates the essential, what I call characteristics of service. And in assuming the interim chair role, I know how important each one of them are, and I'm still learning and perfecting those. Being a good listener, being empathic, being very well organized, an effective problem solver, managing time, a biggie, resolving conflicts, being a good communicator in a variety of different forums, adaptable and flexible, and very importantly, possessing a good sense of humor along the way. So, as I said, I'm a developmentalist. Some of the early beginnings here. Here we see in this 4 very strong women, 4 generations, I should say, of very strong women who provided service to family, community, organizations, etc. This was my mother. Unfortunately, she passed away when I was 16, and I had 3 goals. I was going to keep the family together, I was going to be a leader in my school, and I was going to make it to Penn. Anyhow, on election day, my mother would, as a school-age child, we would take the elders to the polls. Those were the days you had to vote in person at the polls. First, I didn't know why we doing this. And then we were helping them to exercise the franchise. Indeed, we didn't tell them how to vote. When they emerged, they were smiling. They were happy. Their voices indeed were heard. And so this is me. Yes, I was a chubby baby. It's interesting, the variables that we study. Yes. And so we did a lot of babysitting, both within the family and when I was a student nurse. And yes, I was president of the Future Nurses of America. Here we are. And I'm happy to say that many of these individuals, primarily women at the time, are nurses functioning in a variety of settings, including diverse community settings, schools, etc. And as the Future Nurses Club in that high school, we actually did community service. We volunteered in the schools and in the community. And I can say that service is rewarding. We learn from those experiences, and we're delighted to see the consumers of those services being fulfilled and rewarded. And so, yes, we had a variety of different roles. And yes, I was captain of the cheerleaders. Fess up here. I really wanted to play basketball. I loved shooting hoops, but we were not allowed at that time. I won't say who we are, but we weren't. So we were cheerleader, which I still continue to be. I think that's a major role in service. So here I am with my father. You can see we're both looking quite serious, discussing where am I going, what's next. I have to say that my colleagues who were all headed to college and important university roles and et cetera, and they are now. They said, Laura, you're interested in healthcare. You should be a physician. You should be a physician. But I decided to be a nurse. In that conversation with my father and continuing, we know that a life of service requires competence, specific competencies in terms of the service, the unit to which we're providing that service, caring, and importantly, a desire to affect positive change, even in times in which we live, which we'll get to. So here we are as establishing the foundation for a long-time career in nursing. And here we are, a life of service underscore requires a quality education. And I'm delighted to be in the Manning College of Nursing and Health Sciences with outstanding faculty and programs that the Chancellor highlighted are very strong. Okay, so looking across my life, if you will, in terms of service and different roles, and for the students too in the audience. I started out with my master's in nursing of children at TJU in Philadelphia. I joined the faculty at Penn, and I was also a student because the leadership emerged, who was my mentor and continued to be. And I knew that there was opportunity there to provide service, to develop my research and scholarship, teaching, and mentoring. And I had the opportunity to serve as the youngest department chair, division chair, the college senate, and the provost staff conference. So we make decisions, and some ask, why did I leave Penn? Well, I always tell colleagues and students, transitions or decisions should be based on, they should be approach behaviors, not avoidance behaviors. So I went to Case Western Reserve in Cleveland. I was the first endowed chair in nursing of children. Short stay because I knew due to family and other reasons needed to come back to the East Coast, another crossroads. I had two choices, back to Penn or to NYU. Decisions. And due to family and pragmatic reasons, I joined NYU. And I also was in the Department of Nutrition, Food Studies, and Public Health, which really nourished my perspective, my cross-disciplinary perspective and colleagueship, which I think is so important. And then in 2007, I was recruited, as the provost indicated, to be the first, the inaugural, if you will, Associate Dean for Research in the College of Nursing and Health Sciences. And my successors who are here, both Dr. Whiteley and Dr. Wright, who is now in that role, have really added to that foundation and strengthened it in many, many different ways. And then we served in a variety of different roles as Associate Vice Provost for Research, Graduate Studies. And I can say I benefited as much from all of those roles and hope that we did in fact make a difference. So I included this slide to illustrate this was my mentor, Claire Fagan, who role modeled service in many different ways. She was dean of the school. She also served as president of the university. She passed away in December at the age of 97, and we kept in communication through that time period. And this, I mean, as a reminder, my hubby assembled these slides, and I think because he sees people here are very happy. So this was in the science building with the PhD program committee when I was serving also as the graduate program director as well as associate dean for research. And these colleagues have left us since, retired. And moving to the right, smiling faces, Dr. Julie Wright and Dr. Jessica Whiteley, who I worked with and continue to work with. I worked with them in research, continue to work with Dr. Wright in research, and certainly both of them in a variety of service roles. This was, and I was honored to do that, the master lecture at the 2023 Research Day. Moving to the bottom, here we see celebrating the academic and service achievements of former and current PhD students, all of whom have done or are continuing to do very well in all areas. And then finally here, this was the celebratory event. I was of the Exercise and Health Science Department. I was delighted to be invited And this is Dr. Professor Yan, who I'm working with now in research. She gave a great talk this morning on the webinar. And a shout out to Carlos Salas, whose service in the then Go Kids Boston really helped our first research study in the then Go Kids in terms of the intervention and helping to retain the students there. And then we know life of service, as all, requires resiliency and the ability to communicate clearly. Here we are giving service. My father was very involved in a variety of organizations in his community, Lions, Unico, other service clubs. And he knew that I was studying at the time a twin family study of cardiovascular risk factors in children and their parents. Cholesterol was a hot topic. Come and speak. So I did. Now, it was very well received. Whether or not they affected their cholesterol levels, I have no idea. And then, as mentioned, was very involved in the American Heart Association. I would say to the students too in the audience, you have to carefully select the organizations that you're going to provide service to. This was a Meritorious Achievement Award for contributions as a volunteer and a variety of levels in service as well as research, scholarship. And here are the awards for chairing the council. And I'm glad this slide was included because I'd like to acknowledge my nursing college, including Dr. Christine Salvucci, who's here, and Dr. Teresa Roberts, who nominated me and were very patient with me in terms of getting the materials ready for this very distinguished honor. And then finally, if I looked at this in the ecological perspective, been very involved with the Global Cardiovascular Nursing Leadership Forum, championing it over a number of years with nursing leaders from 6 World Health Organization regions, providing service to and research as well, conducting research in vulnerable communities, and particularly with emphasis on the low and middle income countries where the burden is highest. And then I was also delighted to serve as president of the Society of Behavioral Medicine, a multidisciplinary organization. We continue to champion nurses in that organization. And my colleagues, Drs. Wright and Whiteley, are also members of that organization. And I was a founding and continue to be a member, ready to rotate off of the one nursing organization, PCNA. And through that, we've had opportunities to present in different forums. So service, I've learned I have to see continuous improvement, and including the research and scholarship that's going to guide and inform service in a variety of areas, and the policies that affect us, the importance of dissemination of research and scholarship, which is a service in many ways, collaborating and presenting in cross-disciplinary venues. I've had many opportunities and challenges of being the only nurse in these venues. And so lessons learned and final thoughts, what do we do for each other and for the children who carry our message to the future? Neil Postman said it so well. Children are the messages we send to a future we will not see. And so, okay, now that the election is over and the expectation is that healthcare systems and educational systems and et al. Are on new stresses resulting from promises and appointments, are there lessons learned that will help us as healthcare and educational professionals and more be confident? So I go back to where we were. We have to pause and remember our core strengths very much. Second, we must counter the policies and actions that will be adverse and affect populations, particularly our vulnerable population, as Sandro Galeo has said in his Healthiest Goldfish blurb on 4 days after the election. We have to focus on hope and a sense of optimism as well as action. We must commit ourselves to solving problems and resolving conflicts, being a positive change agent. One of my very first publications with my young colleagues on leadership for change. I reviewed that recently for my own self. And we must be passionate about what we do. And it's a long journey, so we must pace ourselves. And with gratitude, this is our son who also chose a service path. He's a fairly newly minted Trooper Hayman with the Massachusetts Department. Massachusetts Department. Okay. And he's not here with us today. He is on leave because our second grandson was born today. Yeah, what a day. We hope Beth is real. And this is our first grandson, and he's a joy of life, really a true joy. Makes it all worthwhile. Our corgi pup, Luna, with unconditional love and the love of my life, who has enabled my service-related roles as well as contributions in a variety of forms. My husband of 50 years, Richard. So as every story, the end. Thank you.
So as we close this event, I think we should appropriately rename it. Certainly this year, it wasn't just the Chancellor's Distinguished Faculty Lecture, it was the Distinguished Faculty Storytelling. And I mean that as a high form of praise. So Suha and Peter and Laura, thank you not just for sharing your talents that we are recognizing with these awards, but thank you for sharing of yourselves. You know, understanding who you are and how you understand who you are in the world and what that means in your work and in our work matters. You know, your stories, they're meaningful, they're poignant, they're both timely and timeless. And it's timely, the work that you have done, the reasons that you do it, the way that you approach it, matters, as Laura was talking about, for our future. And the fact that your stories are very personal, but they're very impactful and they're very communal, for our community here on campus, but beyond. And your stories transcend boundaries, disciplinary boundaries, the boundaries that where we usually think of, too often think of teaching and research and service as these separate things. While you are each being recognized in those realms, we heard in your stories the interconnectedness of the work across those divisions. And so it's inspirational. So thank you for inspiring us. We often talk about, how each of us contributes to the mission of the university. But I think what we heard today, right, was from our leaders, our colleagues, who as they inspire us, they aren't just contributing to UMass Boston's mission, they are co-creating our mission. And when you think about it, right, because a university is our people, that mission only matters is if it's something that we are all not just contributing to, but co-creating. And so thank you for that. And so I think that as we wrap up, I also want to echo the words of our colleagues who each in their own way talked about how important it is in the face of very real challenges, in the face of conflict, destruction, and deconstruction, that we do have a responsibility to use our talents, right, and as a platform for continuous improvement, but to be constructive agents of change. So thank you, each of you, for showing us better ways to do that, to be our best selves. And so in a moment, we all get to then join in as part of this celebration in fellowship and community with a little reception back here. So please do stay and partake as we continue to honor our three wonderful, wonderful colleagues. And the most appropriate way to finish this part of the celebration is to one more time giving them a rousing ovation